Have you ever done something every single day, something you believed was helping you stay healthy, safe, and independent, only to discover much later that it might have been quietly working against you? It's a painful realization, especially when the thing you trusted was something so ordinary, so common, so woven into your daily life that questioning it would have seemed silly. But time has a funny way of revealing quiet truths. And one of those truths, for so many people over the age of 60, starts in a place you'd least expect, your refrigerator. Yes, the fridge, that humming box in the corner of your kitchen, the one that's always been there for you, preserving your groceries, keeping your leftovers cold, and helping you stretch meals across the week. It feels like a friend, a symbol of modern convenience. But what if I told you that friend isn't always on your side? As strange as it may sound, some of the most common foods you place in the fridge, thinking you're doing the right thing, may actually be losing their flavor, their nutrients, and more alarmingly, their safety. This isn't just about taste or texture. For seniors, these small mistakes in food storage could quietly influence your digestion, your immunity, even your risk of long-term health issues. I've seen it with my own eyes. Seniors who complain about their tomatoes tasting bland, or their garlic smelling off, or their bread turning dry and stiff overnight. Many of them just assume it's old age or bad luck. But when we look a little closer, the answer is much simpler. And often, it's sitting right there on the top shelf of the fridge. Let me be very clear. This isn't about fear. It's about empowerment. Because when you know which foods should never be refrigerated and why, you're not just saving your taste buds, you're protecting your health. You're preserving vital nutrients. And you're taking back control of something that many people unknowingly give up, the quality of what they eat every single day. And that matters more than ever. You see, as we grow older, our relationship with food changes. The appetite may shrink, the senses may dull, and the body becomes more sensitive to things that once went unnoticed. Which means every bite counts. Every source of nutrition, every simple choice becomes part of how we age, with strength, with clarity, with vitality. That's why I made this for you. In this heartfelt conversation, we'll walk through the foods you should never refrigerate, not because of some trendy internet rule, but because science, experience, and wisdom say so. We'll talk about how cold temperatures can change the structure of certain foods, strip them of essential nutrients, and even create harmful compounds. But more importantly, I'll show you how easy it is to change those habits, how small shifts can protect your health and enhance your meals, one ingredient at a time. We'll start with something simple, a food almost every home has, a food that seems harmless. But once you understand what happens to it inside a cold fridge, you may never store it the same way again. Before we dive into it, let me gently ask, if you find this helpful, if it reminds you of something you've wondered about before, or if you simply want more honest, caring advice for living well after 60, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment below. Even a few words like, "That's me," or "I didn't know that," can help someone else feel seen, understood, and empowered. All right, are you ready? Because what we're about to talk about might surprise you. It might even make you open your fridge and look at it differently. But most of all, it might help you feel just a little more in control of your health. And that, at any age, is a beautiful thing. Let's begin with something you probably eat all the time, something you think you're storing right, but just might not be. And once you see why, you'll never look at it the same way again. Let's talk about potatoes. They've been a staple in your kitchen for as long as you can remember. Mashed, roasted, fried, or baked, potatoes carry the warmth of family dinners, comforting meals on cold days, and simple dishes that fill the heart as much as they fill the belly. They're humble, familiar, and always seem to find their way into the weekly grocery bag. So naturally, like many people, you may think the best way to keep them fresh is to put them in the fridge. After all, cold keeps things from going bad, right? But here's the part no one tells you. When you store potatoes in a refrigerator, you're not preserving them, you're transforming them. Quietly, unknowingly, and not for the better. You see, cold temperatures trigger a strange reaction inside a potato. The starch, which gives it that satisfying fluffy texture, begins to convert into sugar. At first, this sounds harmless. But once you cook those cold-stored potatoes, especially if you're baking or frying them, those sugars react with heat to form something called acrylamide. It's a chemical, and not a friendly one. Acrylamide has been studied for years, and some research suggests it may be linked to cancer. Now, that doesn't mean eating one batch of French fries from the fridge will make you sick. But over time, especially for older adults whose bodies process things differently, this hidden compound could quietly increase risks we'd rather avoid. And even if you put the science aside, cold-stored potatoes simply don't taste right. Have you ever bitten into a baked potato that felt oddly sweet and gritty instead of smooth and rich? That's the cold doing its quiet damage. It's turning something wholesome into something off, something less enjoyable. And when food starts losing its joy, it becomes harder to eat well, harder to nourish your body with pleasure and consistency. But there's more. The refrigerator's cool air might feel clean and dry, but for a potato, it's the opposite of what it needs. The moisture inside creates a perfect environment for mold, for soft spots, for that strange earthy smell that tells you, this one's going bad. And that happens faster than you think. One day they look fine. The next, they're shriveled, sprouting, or worse. And here's something especially important for you to know. If you ever see green on a potato, green patches or a greenish tint to the skin, don't ignore it. That's a sign of solanine, a natural toxin that builds up when potatoes are exposed to light. For a healthy adult, a small amount may just cause stomach discomfort. But for seniors, it can lead to nausea, headaches, or even confusion and dizziness. These aren't the kinds of risks we need to take, not for something as simple and avoidable as how we store our potatoes. So what should you do instead? Give them a cool, dark place to rest. A pantry, a drawer, a paper or mesh bag tucked away from sunlight, somewhere with gentle airflow and no excess moisture. That's where potatoes thrive. That's where they stay firm, safe, and full of the good things your body actually needs. And one more tip that could quietly extend their life and yours: keep them away from onions. Yes, I know, it's convenient to toss them into the same basket, but onions release gases and moisture that make potatoes spoil faster. It's one of those small details that most people overlook, but it makes all the difference. So the next time you bring home a bag of potatoes, whether from the store or the market, pause for a moment, skip the fridge, choose a better spot. You'll not only protect their flavor, but you'll also protect your health in ways you might not even realize. And isn't that what we all want at this stage in life? To do the little things right, to feel confident in our choices, to know that we're caring for ourselves in ways that truly matter, not with complicated routines, but with simple acts of wisdom. Now that you know the truth about potatoes, let's move on to something just as familiar, something that brightens your salads, your sandwiches, and maybe even your windowsill garden. But when it's placed in the fridge, it loses more than just its taste. It loses its purpose. And once you hear what happens to it, you might never put it on the cold shelf again. Now let's turn our attention to something a little more colorful. Something you might find sitting on your kitchen counter, in a salad bowl, or gently sliced on top of your sandwich. The tomato. Juicy, bright, and full of life. Tomatoes are more than just a kitchen ingredient. They're little bursts of sunshine on your plate. But if you've ever wondered why your tomatoes feel mealy or taste bland, there's a quiet reason, and it might just be hiding in plain sight, behind your refrigerator door. You see, tomatoes are sensitive. They may seem hardy and firm, but at their core, they're delicate. They continue to ripen after being picked, softening naturally, developing flavor, color, and those sweet, tangy notes that make them taste like real food, not just filler on a plate. But when you put them in the fridge, all of that just stops. Cold temperatures interrupt their ripening process like a curtain falling mid-performance. The flavor flattens, the texture turns grainy, almost rubbery. You slice into what should be a juicy, vibrant tomato, only to find a watery, tasteless shell of what it could have been. And while taste might seem like a small price to pay, for someone over 60, when appetite becomes a more delicate dance, flavor matters more than ever. But this isn't only about taste. Tomatoes carry something powerful within them, lycopene. It's a rich, red antioxidant that's been studied for its ability to support heart health, protect against certain cancers, and reduce inflammation in the body. For seniors, lycopene is a quiet hero, working in the background to protect and preserve. But when you chill a tomato, you also lower its lycopene content. Just like that, a cold storage mistake quietly robs you of one of the very reasons tomatoes are worth eating in the first place. And here's the thing. So many people keep tomatoes in the fridge out of habit, not because they spoil faster, but because they're trying to be careful. You may think you're helping them last longer, but in truth, unless they're overly ripe and on the edge of going soft, most tomatoes do better out in the open. Let them breathe. Let them bask a little. Let them do what nature intended. A simple bowl on your kitchen counter will do, away from direct sunlight, stem side down to preserve moisture. And if you're storing them near other fruits, especially bananas or apples, know this. Those fruits release ethylene gas, which can rush the ripening process and lead to spoilage. It's a bit like rushing an old friend to tell their story before they're ready. The result just isn't the same. And here's a little insider trick for when life gets busy or shopping trips grow farther apart. If your tomatoes are already very ripe and you need a few extra days, it's okay to refrigerate them, but only as a short-term fix. And always bring them back to room temperature before using. Let them warm gently. Let the flavor return to the surface. You'll be amazed how much difference that makes. I remember visiting an older friend once, someone in her late 70s who loved to cook. She had a small garden, nothing fancy, just a few pots and vines outside her window. One day I saw her picking a handful of tomatoes, gently turning them in her hands, smiling like she'd just found treasure. When I asked her why she never put them in the fridge, she said, "Tomatoes are alive. Let them keep living a little longer." It stayed with me, and maybe that's what this is all about. Not just tomatoes, not just food storage, but the idea that we're allowed to slow things down, to let things ripen in their own time, to preserve life where we can, even in the smallest of ways. Because when you're older, you start to realize those small acts are not so small after all. So tonight, or maybe the next time you shop, take a look at your tomatoes. Hold them in your hand. Feel their weight, their softness. Give them a place to rest, to ripen, to give you the flavor and the strength they were meant to deliver. And while we're on the topic of flavorful kitchen essentials, let's talk about another familiar face. One that adds richness and depth to just about every meal, but may not be thriving in your refrigerator the way you think. The next ingredient often shares space with potatoes, even though it really shouldn't. And when you learn what cold air does to it, you might decide to give it a better home too. Now let's open the pantry door a little wider and talk about something that's probably been with you through decades of home-cooked meals. Something that starts almost every recipe, that fills the kitchen with a scent both comforting and familiar. The onion. There's something about onions that feels grounding. Maybe it's the way they sizzle gently in the pan, releasing that rich aroma that says, this is going to be a real meal. Maybe it's how they show up in the background of so many dishes, never demanding attention but always making everything taste just a little better. But as cherished as onions are, many of us, perhaps even you, have unknowingly been storing them in a place that slowly takes away everything that makes them special. Yes, the refrigerator. It might seem harmless, maybe even sensible. After all, it's cool, it's closed, it keeps things fresh, right? But onions don't like the cold. In fact, cold temperatures change them in ways you can't see, at least not at first. When stored in the fridge, the starch inside onions begins to turn into sugar, and that natural crispness you expect, it disappears. Instead, you get a soggy, slippery texture that makes you wrinkle your nose. And when you're standing at the stove ready to cook something comforting, that slimy mess doesn't feel very comforting at all. But it's not just texture that suffers. Refrigerators trap moisture, and moisture is the last thing onions want. It encourages mold, it speeds up spoilage, and worst of all, it invites something quiet and sneaky, odor absorption. Onions are like little sponges. They soak up the smells around them. Whether it's last night's leftovers, that forgotten slice of cheese, or even just the metallic tang of a too-cold fridge. And once they absorb those smells, they bring them straight into your cooking. I've heard so many older friends complain that their food doesn't taste right anymore. They assume their taste buds are fading, but sometimes it's not them. It's the ingredients, the way they've been stored, the way they've quietly changed before they ever reached the cutting board. So where should your onions go? Give them a cool, dry, and open place to breathe. A wooden basket, a mesh bag, even a paper bag tucked into a cupboard. Onions love air. They need circulation to stay fresh and firm. And here's something most people miss. Don't put them next to potatoes. They might seem like old pantry friends, but together they speed up each other's spoilage. Potatoes release gases and moisture that cause onions to soften faster, to sprout sooner, and to lose their vitality before you ever get to use them. And speaking of sprouting, have you ever noticed those green shoots poking out from your onions? A little spiral of green that seems harmless at first? For seniors, that's worth paying attention to. Those shoots are more than just a sign of aging. They signal a loss of nutrients and, in large amounts, can cause digestive upset. Your body, especially now, deserves better than that. There's something beautifully simple about keeping onions the old-fashioned way. No machines, no chemicals, just a breathable bag, a dark corner, and time. That's all they need. And in return, they give you flavor, texture, and a quiet kind of nourishment that's hard to replace. I remember visiting an elderly neighbor once, someone who had been cooking long before microwaves or prepackaged meals were common. She had a pantry that smelled of wood and spice, with baskets of onions, garlic, and herbs hanging from hooks. When I asked her why she didn't keep anything in the fridge, she said with a laugh, "Cold air kills food's memory. I want mine to remember where it came from." There's something deeply true in that. Real food, food with flavor and soul, wants to breathe. It wants to live just a little longer before it nourishes you. And when you care for it, it cares for you back. That kind of exchange, that quiet reciprocity, becomes more important with each passing year. So the next time you reach for an onion, take a moment, ask yourself where it's been, and maybe, just maybe, give it the gift of a proper home. One that lets it stay strong, aromatic, and full of the goodness it was meant to share. Now that you've seen what cold can do to something as sturdy as an onion, let's turn to another kitchen staple, one that's just as beloved, just as essential. But when stored wrong, it doesn't just lose its power, it starts to turn bitter, literally. And if you've ever wondered why your garlic isn't quite what it used to be, you're not alone. Now let's talk about garlic. It's tiny, it's humble, but it carries within it a strength far greater than its size. For centuries, garlic has been used not just to flavor food, but to heal, to protect, to nourish the body in quiet, powerful ways. You might remember your parents, or maybe even your grandparents, crushing a clove of garlic into soup when someone had a cold, or rubbing it with oil to soothe aches and pains. Garlic has always felt like an old friend, fierce, reliable, and full of heart. But even old friends need the right environment to stay strong. If you've been keeping your garlic in the fridge, thinking you're extending its life or preserving its power, I want to gently offer you a different perspective. Because cold air, despite all its promises, quietly steals what makes garlic special. You see, garlic doesn't like the chill. In fact, it reacts to the cold in a very specific way. It starts to sprout. Those tiny green shoots poking out of the clove might look innocent, even fresh, but they signal something deeper, garlic losing its potency. The flavor becomes sharper, more bitter, the texture softens, and the beneficial compounds, the very things that give garlic its healing properties, begin to break down. There's a compound in garlic called allicin. It's responsible for that unmistakable aroma, the warmth in your chest after eating it, and many of its most powerful health effects, lowering blood pressure, boosting the immune system, reducing inflammation. But here's the catch. Allicin is fragile. It doesn't do well in damp, cold conditions. When garlic is kept in the refrigerator, especially over time, allicin breaks down faster, quietly disappearing before it ever reaches your plate. And it doesn't stop there. The moisture inside a fridge can lead to mold, rot, and even a strange spongy texture that's hard to describe until you've felt it yourself. And because garlic is porous, it easily absorbs surrounding odors, milk, onions, leftovers, even things you thought were sealed tight. Before you know it, that once powerful clove smells off, tastes off, and and no longer gives you what your body truly needs. So what can you do? The solution is beautifully simple. Garlic thrives in the open. Keep it at room temperature in a dry, well-ventilated container, a mesh basket, a clay garlic keeper, even a small wooden bowl in a quiet corner of your kitchen, somewhere with airflow, away from excess heat or moisture, somewhere it can just be. Alive, potent, ready. And here's something that may surprise you. When garlic is stored properly, it lasts longer, not shorter. It remains firm, full of flavor, and rich with the very compounds that can help support your heart, reduce stress in your body, and even improve circulation. For seniors, these are no small benefits. They are, in many ways, part of what helps you stay independent, strong, and sharp as the years go by. I remember a time when I brought a store-bought bulb of garlic to an elderly neighbor. She held it in her hands like she was holding something sacred. "Don't hide it in the cold," she told me with a wink. "Let it breathe. Garlic knows what to do when you let it be." It made me smile then. It makes me smile now. Because there's something profoundly wise in that. Sometimes the best care we can offer, whether to ourselves or to the food we nourish our bodies with, is simply to let things breathe, to give them space, and to trust in their natural rhythm. So the next time you unwrap a clove of garlic, take a moment to really smell it. Feel the firmness of its skin. Crush it gently beneath your fingers and listen to the subtle snap that says, "I'm ready." That's not just flavor, that's energy, that's medicine, that's life. And if you've been wondering why your garlic has lost its strength, or turned bitter, or started to mold too soon, now you know. It was never about the garlic itself, it was about the cold. Now let's move on to something soft and green. A fruit, technically, but one that has earned its place on toast, in salads, and even in smoothies. It's become a symbol of healthy eating in recent years, and for good reason. But this fruit is delicate, and if you refrigerate it too soon, you might be freezing out all the good it was meant to give you. If you've ever cut into an avocado and found it rubbery, flavorless, or hard as a rock, keep listening. The avocado. Creamy, rich, and quietly luxurious, avocados have a way of making even the simplest meal feel special. A slice on toast, a few cubes in a salad, mashed with a pinch of salt and a squeeze of lime. It's no wonder they've become a favorite for anyone who's trying to eat a little better, live a little healthier, or just enjoy something wholesome and satisfying. But if you've ever brought home a firm, promising avocado, waited patiently for it to soften, only to find days later that it turned mushy, tasteless, or strangely rubbery, you're not alone. And if your instinct was to store it in the fridge to keep it fresh, I understand completely. It seems logical, even responsible. But in this case, it might be working against you. Avocados are sensitive. They're one of those foods that keep developing after they're picked, softening, ripening, building flavor from the inside out. But when you put them in the fridge too soon, that natural rhythm is stopped in its tracks. The cold air interrupts the enzymes that trigger ripening. It's like freezing a song halfway through. The avocado stays firm, yes, but it never truly becomes what it was meant to be. You end up with something that looks fine on the outside, but inside, it's tough, pale, and tastes more like wax than wonder. And that's a shame. Not just because it's unappetizing, but because you're missing out on so many of the nutrients that make avocados a quiet superfood for older adults. Avocados are loaded with heart-healthy fats, monounsaturated ones that support good cholesterol and reduce inflammation. They're rich in potassium, which helps regulate blood pressure, and they contain fiber that supports digestion, brain health, and even mood. For seniors especially, this little green fruit can make a big difference, but only if it's stored right. So what should you do instead? It's simple. Let your avocados ripen naturally at room temperature. Leave them on the counter. Feel them each day with gentle fingers. When they yield just slightly to your touch, like a soft cheek, they're ready. That's when the flavor is richest, the texture is silkiest, and the nutrients are at their peak. If you're in a hurry, there's a little trick. Place your avocados in a brown paper bag with a banana or an apple. These fruits release a natural gas that encourages ripening without harming the flavor. And once your avocado is perfectly ripe, then you can store it in the fridge, but only to buy yourself a day or two. Any longer, and it begins to lose its magic. And what if you only want to eat half? That's a common moment, especially when we're cooking for one. Here's the secret. Brush the cut surface with lemon or lime juice. The gentle acid slows down the browning that makes avocados look sad and tired. Wrap it tight or store it in an airtight container, and it'll be there waiting, still good, still nourishing, for your next bite. I once knew a woman in her early 80s who ate half an avocado every morning. She said it made her feel young, like she was feeding her body something kind, and she always kept a little note on her counter that said, "Let me breathe." At first, I thought it was something poetic. Then I realized she was talking about her avocados, and maybe herself. Because just like avocados, we too need time to ripen, to soften, to reach the best version of ourselves without being rushed or chilled or forced into a mold that doesn't suit us anymore. So let your avocados take their time. Let them sit out in the open. Let them breathe and become everything they were meant to be. And when you eat them, knowing you've kept their flavor, their strength, and their purpose intact, you'll be doing more than just feeding your body. You'll be honoring it. And while we're thinking about fruits that ripen gently on the counter, let's talk about another one. Soft, sweet, familiar, and easy to love. A fruit that brings comfort to many, especially in the quiet hours of the day. But if you've ever put your bananas in the fridge, you might have noticed something odd happening. Their skin turns dark, their texture changes, and that sweet, familiar flavor, it just fades. Let's talk about why. Bananas. They've been with us for so long, haven't they? Always there when we needed something quick, something soft, something kind to the stomach. Maybe you've reached for one in the morning, peeled it gently, and let that smooth sweetness ease you into the day. Or maybe you've carried one in your bag for a walk, a doctor's appointment, or simply because it reminded you of something comforting, something simple and good. Bananas are like that. Familiar, forgiving. They don't ask for much, but they give a lot. Energy, potassium, gentle sugars that don't jolt the body but support it, especially when energy levels dip or digestion becomes more delicate with age. And yet, so many of us have been unknowingly mistreating this generous fruit. Out of habit or out of a wish to keep it fresh, we put bananas in the refrigerator. And what happens next is one of those quiet little tragedies you only notice if you're paying attention. The skin turns dark, almost black sometimes. It looks like the banana is rotting. So you peel it open quickly, hoping the inside is still good. And maybe it is, but maybe it's firm in a strange way. Still starchy, less sweet than you remembered, less giving. And you wonder, did I do something wrong? The answer, gently, is yes, but not in the way you think. Because bananas, like many living things, don't respond well to cold. Refrigeration stops the natural ripening process that turns starches into sugars. That's the process that gives bananas their soft, mellow sweetness, the thing that makes them easy to eat, especially for seniors with slower digestion or smaller appetites. Cold temperatures freeze that transformation. Not literally, but chemically. The sugars don't form, the flesh stays firm, the flavor falls flat. And worse, the skin reacts to the shock of the cold by darkening quickly, sending the signal, "I'm done," even when the inside is still unripe. It's confusing. It makes people toss out bananas they could have enjoyed. Or worse, eat them thinking something's wrong with their taste buds, when really, it's just storage gone sideways. So what's the better way? Bananas are happiest on the counter. Let them sit out. Give them space. Keep them away from direct heat or sun, and if you can, hang them. That little lift keeps bruising at bay and lets air flow naturally. If you want to slow down ripening, separate them from the bunch. Just a little space can go a long way. And here's a lovely trick for when life moves too fast and your bananas ripen before you're ready. Freeze them. Peel them first, slice them if you like, and place them in an airtight container. They'll be waiting for you whenever you need a little boost. In a smoothie, stirred into oatmeal, or baked into warm banana bread that fills your home with a smell so rich it feels like a hug. Because bananas aren't just food. They're nourishment in every sense, physical, emotional, even spiritual. They remind us that sweetness can be simple, that care can be quiet, that we don't need to complicate something that's already good. I once met a retired teacher in her late 70s who ate a banana before every walk, rain or shine. It was her ritual, her way of saying, "I'm giving my body what it needs." She told me, "Bananas are like old friends. They don't last forever, but they're always there when it matters." And maybe, just maybe, that's the lesson. Not everything needs to be preserved or extended. Some things are meant to be enjoyed in their time, natural, ripe, unhurried. Like us, they deserve a little patience, a little warmth, a little room to be themselves. So the next time you're tempted to slide your bananas into the fridge, pause, let them ripen gently. Let them offer you what they were meant to. And in return, you'll receive more than just flavor. You'll receive something that feeds you in ways beyond hunger. And now, let's move from something soft and sweet to something juicy and bold. A fruit that refreshes like a summer breeze, yet holds within it more power than meets the eye. But only if you store it the right way. Because if you've ever kept a whole melon in the fridge before slicing it, you may have unknowingly drained it of its deepest gifts. Melons. There's something almost magical about them, isn't there? The weight of a ripe watermelon in your arms, the sound of a knife slicing clean through the thick green skin. The first bite, cold, sweet, juicy, so full of life it feels like a memory. Maybe it reminds you of childhood summers, barefoot afternoons, or the joy of sharing slices with grandchildren on a warm day. Whether it's watermelon, cantaloupe, or honeydew, melons are more than just food. They're a kind of refreshment that goes deeper than thirst. Especially as we get older, when staying hydrated becomes more important, and every drop of water our body takes in feels like it matters just a little more. And so naturally, we want to keep them fresh. We want to preserve that sweetness, that juiciness, that feeling. So we put them in the fridge, whole, untouched, still wrapped in their rind, thinking we're doing the right thing. But here's what many people don't realize. Cold air, for all its preserving power, can rob a whole melon of its full potential before it's even been opened. When you place an uncut melon in the refrigerator, the natural ripening process slows down. The sugars inside, those beautiful compounds that make a melon taste like sunshine, stop developing. The fruit stays firm, yes, but something gets lost along the way. That deep, fragrant sweetness you were hoping for never fully arrives. The texture can shift too, becoming mealy, watery, or oddly dull. You cut in, expecting joy, and are met with disappointment. And more than that, the nutrients begin to fade. Whole melons are rich in antioxidants like beta-carotene and vitamin C, both of which support your immune system, protect your vision, and keep your skin healthy as you age. But refrigeration before slicing can cause those antioxidants to degrade, slowly, silently. And when the melon finally reaches your plate, it may no longer offer the same vitality it once promised. That's a quiet loss, one you might not even notice at first. But over time, it matters. Because when we're in our 60s, 70s, 80s, or beyond, we don't want to just eat. We want our food to do something for us, to nourish, to support, to protect, especially when it comes in such a naturally beautiful package. So here's the shift. Let your whole melons rest at room temperature. On the kitchen counter, in a cool, shaded corner. Give them time to finish their ripening. Let them build sweetness day by day. Feel their weight grow just a bit heavier. Smell their aroma deepening. That's when they're ready. That's when they'll offer you everything they were meant to. Only once you've sliced them open, only when they're exposed to air, should you place them in the fridge. That's when cold becomes your ally, helping preserve what's already ripened for just a few more days. And here's a gentle tip. After slicing, store your melon in an airtight container. Or if you prefer, cover the exposed surface with a bit of plastic wrap before sealing it away. This helps lock in the moisture, the flavor, the freshness. Enjoy it within 3 or 4 days. Not because it will spoil right away, but because that's when it's most alive, most giving. I remember sitting with an old friend in her kitchen, watching her cut open a cantaloupe she'd kept on the counter for 5 days. The smell filled the room instantly, sweet, honeyed, inviting. She looked at me and said, "You have to let them finish what they started. If you rush them, they don't sing." And she was right, because melons do sing in their own quiet way. Not with sound, but with flavor, with hydration, with nutrients that move gently through the body and remind you, you're alive, you're worthy of sweetness. You deserve things that nourish without effort, without noise. So the next time you bring home a melon, resist the urge to tuck it away in the cold. Let it sit out, let it breathe, let it finish its journey. And when you do finally slice into it, when that first bite floods your senses, you'll know it was worth the wait. Now, let's turn to something that may seem simple, ordinary even. But for many, it's the heart of every breakfast, the comfort behind every sandwich, the warmth beside a bowl of soup. Yet when stored the wrong way, it turns from comfort to disappointment. Let's talk about bread and why the fridge might be making it grow old long before its time. Bread. There's something quietly reassuring about it, isn't there? The simple act of reaching for a slice in the morning, the sound of it toasting, the smell that fills the kitchen when it warms beside a bowl of soup, or when it cradles your favorite sandwich fillings between its soft, familiar layers. For many of us, bread isn't just food, it's tradition, it's rhythm, it's comfort. And because it feels precious, especially when you live alone or your appetite is smaller, you want to keep it fresh, you want it to last. So like so many others, you tuck it into the fridge thinking it's the safest place, the smartest choice. But here's the gentle truth. Cold is not kind to bread. It's strange, isn't it? You'd think that colder means longer lasting, that putting your bread in the fridge would protect it from mold or staleness. But what really happens is something quieter and much faster. Inside your refrigerator, the starch in bread begins to crystallize. Even though the loaf may still look soft and the expiration date is days away, the bread begins to dry from the inside out. It goes stale, not from time, but from temperature. One day it's soft and giving. The next it feels stiff, crumbly, hollow. The crust toughens, the inside hardens. The experience of eating it becomes less satisfying, less enjoyable. And for many older adults, whose appetite may already be gentle, whose jaw may not want to fight with tough crusts or dry crumbs, this quiet shift can be the difference between eating well and skipping the meal altogether. Some people try to save it by reheating. Others toast it again and again, hoping to bring back what was lost. But once the texture changes, once that freshness has slipped away, it's hard to get it back. And sometimes, ironically, refrigeration can even encourage mold, especially if the loaf is kept in plastic, where moisture gathers and clings to the surface. What began as a well-meaning act of preservation can turn into a breeding ground for the very thing you were trying to avoid. So, what's the alternative? If you plan to enjoy your bread within a few days, let it rest in a cool, dry pantry. Keep it wrapped gently, but not tightly. A bread box, a linen bag, even just loosely folded paper can protect it while still allowing air to flow. But if you're someone who eats slowly or who treasures a single slice a day, not a whole loaf at once, there's a better way. Freeze it. Yes, freeze it. It sounds odd at first, but bread freezes beautifully. Slice it beforehand, and when you're ready for a piece, just pull one out. You can toast it straight from the freezer. No waiting, no thawing. It crisps up gently, warms through, and gives you everything you want from a slice of bread. Freshness, flavor, texture, no waste, no rush. I once visited a neighbor, an 81-year-old widow who lived alone but cooked like she still had a table of 6. She kept her bread in the freezer, wrapped in small bundles of 2 slices each. "I don't like surprises," she said. "This way I know each slice is as good as the last." And she was right, because part of aging gracefully is learning how to honor the pace of your own life. You don't need to eat faster or more than you want to, just because food might go bad. You can store it in a way that works with you, not against you. A way that supports your habits, your timing, your quiet, nourishing routines. So the next time you reach for that loaf, pause. Ask yourself not just how do I keep this from spoiling, but how do I keep this as something that brings me joy? Because bread, when it's soft and fresh, feeds more than your body. It feeds your spirit. It brings warmth to cold mornings. It wraps around moments of solitude with the same comfort it once brought to a busy dinner table. And that matters. That's worth preserving. Not with cold, but with care. Now, as we near the end of our little journey through the kitchen, let's turn to something that doesn't look like it needs protecting at all. A rich, golden liquid tucked into elegant bottles. Something that many of us use every day without thinking. But behind its smooth surface, it holds delicate properties, and if stored wrong, those benefits quietly fade away. Let's talk about olive oil and why the fridge may be the last place it belongs. Olive oil. Just the name itself carries a certain elegance, doesn't it? There's something timeless about it, something old and wise. It doesn't shout for attention like spices or sizzle like butter in a hot pan, but it lingers, it enhances, it brings out the best in whatever it touches. For many of us, olive oil is a quiet cornerstone in the kitchen, drizzled over a salad, stirred into a pot of warm soup, used to roast vegetables until golden and tender. It feels healthy, whole, natural, and it is. Especially for older adults, olive oil can be a gift, a golden thread connecting taste and wellness in a single, smooth pour. But even something as noble as olive oil can be misunderstood. And one of the most common mistakes? Tucking it away into the refrigerator, thinking we're keeping it safe. The truth is, cold doesn't protect olive oil. It punishes it. When you store olive oil in the fridge, it hardens. It becomes cloudy, thick, sometimes waxy. It no longer flows. You have to wait for it to thaw, to return to something usable. And in that waiting, something else happens. Tiny droplets of moisture can begin to form inside the bottle. Condensation. It doesn't seem like much, just a little fog, a bit of water. But over time, that moisture can begin to spoil the oil, quietly, silently. It can introduce bacteria. It can shift the flavor. It can cause oxidation, the slow, invisible process that turns something vibrant and nourishing into something flat or even rancid. And if you're using extra virgin olive oil, which many people over 60 do because of its heart benefits, then it's even more fragile. Its rich antioxidants, its subtle taste, its beautiful golden color, all of it begins to fade if the oil isn't treated with care. But don't worry, the fix is simple. Keep your olive oil in a cool, dark place, away from heat, away from light, away from the fridge, a pantry, a cupboard, a drawer near the stove, as long as it doesn't get too warm. Use dark glass bottles or stainless steel containers to protect the oil from light. Make sure the lid is tight. That's all it takes. And the reward? Olive oil that still sings, that still gives your body what it needs. Rich in monounsaturated fats that support your heart, full of compounds that reduce inflammation, known to boost brain function and guard against memory loss. Every drop matters. And when it's fresh, well-preserved, and handled gently, it delivers far more than just flavor. I once asked an older gentleman, an 86-year-old who walked daily, cooked every meal for himself, and read every label like a scholar, what his secret was. He smiled and said, "I don't have a secret. I just treat my food the way I treat myself. I keep it in the right place. I let it breathe, and I don't rush it." It made me think, because maybe this whole journey we've taken together, through potatoes and tomatoes, through garlic and bread, through melons and avocados, and now olive oil, isn't just about food. Maybe it's about us, about how we care for ourselves, even in the quietest ways, how we protect what we love, how we honor what still nourishes us. The fridge isn't the enemy, but it isn't always the answer either, especially not for foods that are alive in their own way, that need a little more thought, a little more room, a little more wisdom. And you, my dear friend, carry that wisdom now. You know the signs, you understand the shifts, you see where old habits may need a little adjusting, and you have the power, starting today, to make changes that are small but meaningful, that support your body, that protect your health, that bring joy back into your kitchen, one ingredient at a time. So the next time you open your fridge, take a moment, look inside with new eyes, ask yourself what truly belongs there, and what might do better elsewhere. You'll find perhaps that with a few simple changes, your food begins to taste richer, last longer, and support you more fully. And in doing so, you'll be reminded that age is not a loss of strength, but a gathering of wisdom. Before you go, I'd love to know, was there anything in this list that surprised you? Were you storing any of these foods in the fridge without realizing the harm? Leave a comment below. Even just a simple, "I didn't know that," or "That's me," can help someone else feel less alone on this journey. And if this video helped you, even in some small way, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Share it with a friend or family member who might be making these same quiet mistakes. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. There's so much more we want to share with you, more ways to live well, eat well, and feel empowered at every stage of life. Thank you for spending this time with me. You deserve food that feeds more than just your body. You deserve choices that support your health, your joy, and your independence. Until next time, Stay well, stay curious, and above all, stay kind to yourself.